Hey guys, how's it going? KRIPP'S here. Today, as promised, we have a bonus video for you guys going over the second character I made in the still fairly new Lake of Kalandra League in Path of Exile. Now, my first character, the video I uploaded yesterday, is the Ice Crash Elementalist, which was a real blast to play, and I do encourage you guys to check that out because I think for some people it would actually be a more interesting build than this one. But for you minion players, we are back playing minions, well, apparently. So, minions. How do minions work? Are minions good in this league? Well, the short answer is no, not really. As good as you might think minions might be this league, they are quite a bit worse. However, the new mechanic for minions is generally one that you can see on this jewel. Minions have 15% chance to poison enemies on hit. And the poison, bleed, ignite, and all that kind of crap, not only does it show up on the ghastly eye jewels, but it also has been standardized to not have any hidden buffs or penalties, which means that minions are actually doing the damage they're supposed to with these effects, and if you've played an actual character in Path of Exile, you would know that those effects are pretty good. The main skill for this character is Herald of Purity. I went through all the different minions I could stomach playing, so we did not actually check animate weapon. But for the minions I was actually willing to play, I went through all of them, and the strongest poison-based minion in the game for DPS seems to be Herald of Purity. So, we made a character, and if we're playing poison, we're playing Occultist. So Occultist is what we want to play. We are playing Occultist because Occultist has the Profane Bloom explosions, and this is actually more than just a little bit of fun. It is heavy quality of life for this build. The extra curse, the Chaos Pop, the Chaos negative resistance aura, and the reduced life regeneration rate has actually come in real handy this league as well. The build is pretty similar to one that I have played with the Burning Animate Guardian build, but it is a little bit different because we do actually care about attack speed and accuracy in this build, but we do still need to invest in minion survivability. I have not had any issues with my minions dying. I know many streamers and just people playing the game have, so I will teach you my secrets in this video. But also, you have to make sure your character isn't dying as well. So we have the new spell suppression nodes. I believe they are worth it. These two combined gives us the full 100% spell suppression along with Instinct. Instinct is useful because it's actually a hybrid character, so we are using Energy Shield to actually protect our life. We have maximum spell suppression plus the 6% over, so we're at 56% suppressed when we get hit with the spell. And we have Ghost Dance. This POB is above what I currently have in gear. It actually has the Amunamu's Gaze, which I have not found. It gives you a total of 30 damage over time multiplier for minions, and because minions don't have this on gear, that is actually 30% more poison damage. It's actually pretty crazy. My character also has Anointed Practical Application. There actually was a huge strain on the resists and stats for this character. I initially wanted to use a 4 white Triad Grip, which I actually had my very first league, but I couldn't make the resists work. I couldn't make the stats work. There was no chance I was capping spell suppression. So ultimately, you want to anoint Corrupt. It accounts for 10% of your total damage. And just get the practical application, unless your gear is absolutely crazy, which mine, well, maybe is. We'll go over that in a second. However, the main concept of the build, I think, is really cool. Offensively speaking, I wanted to make a Herald of Purity build, and I wanted to just put the fattest links on it. Multi-strike is the craziest link for damage over time builds because the penalty for attacking repeatedly only applies to the attack damage, not the damage over time. afterwards. So multi-strike is an absurd skill gem for any poison-based build, including minions, as it turns out. Now over here at the bottom we have the full DPS, which includes a bunch of junk minions, the 10 Ray Zombies, that's right, we got the 10 on this build, and the 5 Herald of Purity, which I happen to very luckily have the Labyrinth enchant. Now, I wanted to show you guys kind of the process, how this happened. So you are not seeing double. It is actually a double 5 link. We are not using our main skill on a 6 link setup. So why are we not doing that? Well, the Herald of Purity, it's okay, this DPS is on the low side because I have it set for default attack. The Herald of Purity minions actually do significantly more damage if you use Crusade Slam, but Crusade Slam has a cooldown, so yeah, it just, let's call it like 9 million or so, given all the random factors and stuff like that, approximately, okay? But it's actually a 5 link. So when I first made this build, I told you guys to make the best poison minion build I could, and I put the build together and realized I couldn't afford the mana. I couldn't afford, because Herald of Purity is a reservation skill. It is not just a minion that you cast. It's a minion that first off has the trigger, which gets a little bit wonky as well. And someone in chat mentioned that, why don't I just, instead of using a 6th link, put my zombie gem in the links? And I will demonstrate what happened. So right now we have 7.8. Again, it's default attack. So it's actually a little bit more than that. But let's just say, for comparison purposes, 7.8 million DPS. So if we actually attach melee physical damage, but then remove the zombie gem, we're actually at 7 million. Ray Zombie, in the same link setup as Herald of Purity, is actually the best support gem for Herald of Purity. But it is not just that. Ray Zombie, well, they're minions as well. Not only that, they are permanent minions. Not only that, Herald of Purity ends up reserving less mana, because now it doesn't have a link that contributes to its reservation cost. But now, also, we are going to have a really good time. We're putting into the T16 map vanilla just so you guys can kind of see what it's like. We're going to have a really good time getting our minions going. Herald of Purity triggers if you are hitting a rare or unique, which is why we have a level 1 Stormbrand. We can just put that down and it will trigger if we need it to. But for the other effects, we need to get kills. However, there is a detail to that. If we get kills from damage over time effects, as you're seeing there, they count as the player kills. So there is a natural affinity for poison minions with Herald of Purity, which is really fantastic. But also, occultist pops happen all the time. So when you're running through a map, those occultist pops are continuously spawning minions and refreshing your Herald of Purity minions. They're fantastic for it. They're unbelievable for it. You have this satisfying explosion-based character that is also a summoner. And you can see it working. Sure, you know, it tackles on the content just fine, but more importantly, it's really cool mechanically how it works. It's really fun how it works, and there is a natural flow to this character. The character will go over some of the stats, skills, and defenses and details that, you know, all summoners kind of have to go through, but we'll just give you guys a little bit of a demonstration here of some boss DPS. It can take a little bit to wind up because it's poison damage. I don't even have a culling effect because the last 10% is significantly faster than any other 10% of the life pool. But yeah, that's a T16 map, very easy. If you watch the footage, I probably didn't even lose any health. And that is in a large contribution to Ghost Dance. Now, I played a summoner with similar defenses, and it was extremely tanky. And it was a character that, believe it or not, just like this one, had next to 0 armor. It's still good to have a little bit of armor, however. A little bit of armor goes a long way to stop mobs that have like repetition attacks, which usually do very low damage. Armor in Path of Exile, if you're not familiar, the amount of damage percentage that it reduces a hit by fluctuates based on the size of the hit. So if you have like literally 0 armor, there's just a few things in the game that do way too much damage to your character. But if you can get a little bit of armor, put down a granite flask for the maps, you should be good to go. It turns out that most physical attack related things that happen are just the things, random mobs in a map. When it comes to bossing and all that, it's generally the spell damage you have to worry about, and this character does very well against it because of the spell suppression. And I hardly have any spell suppression on my gear because I have most of it through the passive tree, which is now easily doable. Now, summoners lost a lot of power since the last league. If I'm honest with you guys, this minion character is not the strongest minion character I've played, but it might be one of the strongest minion characters that is now playable. The Necromancer Ascendancy class has basically fallen a ton, but the other minion Ascendancy classes, well, they're not better, but they have lost significantly less than the Necromancer. And in one part, it's because Necromancer lost a +2, but in the other, it's that the Bone Rings, it's actually not about the damage. The Bone Rings act as a very easy and very early source to get minion resistances. Now, with a Necromancer, I'd often use like the Resistance Aura, but the Resistance Aura isn't as good as you think because you actually need to be in range of your minions for it to apply. And if you are not in range with your Resistance Aura, your minions are going to die. That's how a lot of people lose their Animate Guardians. That's possibly one of the main killers. If you have full resistance on gear right as you get into maps, which is actually possible with the new Bone Rings, the implicits and explicit modifiers, it is actually a pretty smooth entry point into playing minions, especially if you're not playing a Necromancer. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, my gear is actually quite good on this character because I played a lot, and even though it's solo self-found, well, I guess because it's solo self-found, anytime I find a currency, an essence, a method to roll a piece of gear, I am going to roll a piece of gear. I have this wand, which has +1 minion skill gems. The minion skill gems is really important because there's nothing else that ties the Herald of Purity gem to the zombie gem, and together they are your source of damage. If I don't have any Herald of Purity out, the zombies actually still do like 2.5 million DPS, which is, well, that's like 3 Quinn builds, right? Like it's a lot. It's a lot. So, you know, you don't want to skip out on the zombie damage. You want to get that +1 minion skills. Try to avoid getting the +1 physical, but of course, sometimes you have to, you know, get gear before you get other gear. I have a wand that's actually better than this, but I don't have the harvest essence to give it the area node, and it's not that much better. So, but I have made 2 of these. Let's say they're not quite as hard to make as you might think. This helmet is actually pretty hard to make. The +2 levels of all minion skill gems is a very rare modifier, but the easiest way to make it from, not exactly my experience, but my almost experience, because I did a lot of expedition with ROG, if you look at every single helmet in ROG's shop and you see one with +1 minion skills, it's actually almost certain you're going to be able to upgrade it to level 2. That is so easy to get +2 minion skill gems rather than using like 1,000+ alteration orbs to get what I did. Overall, the extra rolls on this were not very good, but the +1 Ray Zombie and Skeleton count was the Ashling Slam. I couldn't get life on it, but you know what? In solo self-found, that's how it works. The shield actually is what drove the build. I ended up just memeing and using a few life essences on a shield, and 4 life essences in, I came up with this, and it led me to theorcraft the best minion summoner I could possibly make for this league, which is how we ended up with this character. I just finished this amulet, and by finished I mean I just found an imprint beast, because I have this as a blue amulet with +1 all skills and 18 all resists, and as you can see, the Regal and Exalted Orbs that followed did not exactly go according to plan. An item like this is easily surpassable in Trade League. ring with life and resists. The minion movement speed, I would say, is not that necessary. You will have to get used to using Convocation quite a bit. I do like the idea of having one full life ring, one Vermilion ring, but you will need to have a resist stacked bone ring in order to meet the resistance requirements, which are very important. Speaking of which, the plus maximum resist on a shield, I think, is the most important stat on the new shields. Okay, this stat is unbelievably powerful. We can get plus 8 max from the skill tree, plus another 5 puts every single minion at 88 all resists. We are using Bone Offering with the 20% effective offerings in the trigger wand with Desecrate, so it's always going to be up. All of my minions have 75 block, 75 spell block, 88 all resists, regen on block 2%, and I am using Purifying Flame. If you're not familiar with minion builds, the way minions work is if you're like, go there, they will go there. If you're using an ability that has a target, your minions will go in that direction. Now, in my opinion, this is not sufficient for minion builds that actually rely on minions to deal damage, in which case I also want to use Predator. Predator lets you focus fire your minions to a target, but it has to be linked, so right now it's only working with Herald of Purity and Raise Zombie, but that's fine because I actually want to keep my other minions at a generally safe distance, my Raise Spectres and Animate Guardian. My Animate Guardian has been through some really rough situations, some level 83 lakes at like difficulty 10 or 12 plus, and I saw his health move a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to lose him. I think minion survivability is definitely worse than last patch, but last patch we weren't really investing as much or didn't have the tools to invest as much in minion survivability. Fortunately, now the tools are there. Unfortunately, you actually have to use them. If you use those tools, I don't believe that there is a minion survivability problem in the general sense. There are some quirky things because minions are, well, they're actually just quirky in general. For a chest, honestly, whatever. Try to get as much life as you can. This chest is pretty crazy in terms of how much life it has, but it lacks resistances, and that is actually a huge problem. It's put a huge stress on the rest of the gear, so it's still amazing, but it's probably a little bit worse than it looks. Also, this league was my first 5 white from Vorici Craft, so congratulations to me, I guess. For the gloves, you want to cover your spell suppression. It's a lot easier to roll gloves like these if you don't get a hybrid base, but Rog from Expedition was kind enough to award me with this piece, so thank you very much. And this piece, I believe, so thank you very much as well. Expedition has been truly miraculous. What hasn't been miraculous is crafting these damn ghastly eye jewels. This chance to poison enemies on hit is a very difficult modifier to roll. The best way to roll it is through the harvest crafting of chaos, but there's actually quite a lot of chaos modifiers, and you still have to get the other modifiers. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with harvest, but harvest is not easy to farm anything in substantial quantities. So getting good jewels is a real pain, and you can't use Divine Orb if your chance to poison is low and you need it to be higher. So it is a bit of a mess. Now, defensively, this character is also fairly unique, and that in a large way is how I'm going to show you guys the character. So, okay, we're playing Occultist. We need to have a Blasphemy aura. Temp Chains acts as both offense and defense. So it is an aura, so everything around me is affected with Temp Chains. Temp Chains is an action slow, so it makes everything slower as a multiplier, but also buffs and debuffs expire slower. Poison is a debuff, so Temp Chains is actually acting as a defensive slow as well as an offensive poison duration multiplier. So anytime you're getting offense and defense from an ability or source, that's when you're in the money in this game. That's the big bucks, okay? That's what you want, and that's what we're getting. Now, one thing with slows is the more slows you have, the better. The trigger commandment of Spite on hit is an enchant when you get hit, you actually do kind of like a star of projectiles, and they leave behind chilled ground for further slow. Ideally, I would get the chest that has nearby enemies or chilled. It's called Expedition's End. It's from, not Expedition, it's from Heist. It is pretty rare. In fact, I've never gotten one, and this league was no different. I am still searching for that chest, and I would be putting that on the Animate Guardian, to be clear. The Animate Guardian is also responsible for a lot of the slow effects. He is using a Singularity Scepter in one hand, which is a Hinder Aura, and the Hinder Aura reduces movement speed by 25%. Again, we are using slow as a major part of our defenses, but not just that. With Withering Presence, nearby hindered enemies deal 15% reduced damage over time. Now, you can get a hinder effect from spellcast of your minions, but it's like a 5% chance at its best, and I think it's okay if you have several minions that actually cast spells, which I don't, and just for bosses, because you have to attack them multiple times for the thing to actually trigger on the boss, okay? So it is a little bit tricky with that. But because of the Singularity, the Animate Guardian gets to have it all around you all the time. So we are actually activating the nearby hindered enemies deal 15% reduced damage over time. You can get this bonus through one of the curse masteries, but that slow is only 15, and when you're slowing as much as this build is, that is a really big difference, okay? And you can save yourself 4 skill points, which for a build that goes to both Templar and close to Ranger is a pretty significant deal. You know what? I actually have the Animate Guardian album, so let's go over that. So this is Singularity. This is the nearby enemies are hindered. You want to try to get it with higher quality through the Syndicate, and you want to give it Area of Effect. I believe that this modifier is not affected by Area of Effect, but a number of the other ones are, and I think overall it's pretty important. He's dual wielding a Sign of the Sin Eater. Now, because he has Meat Shield, I would say that this is actually giving me like 99% ailment immunity because he's always near me. But it's not 100%, so you need to be mindful of that and still have some flasks and some mitigation to ailments. This does mean that your Animate Guardian is taking a ton of ailments from all of your other minions as well, and needs to be accounting for this. Now, this is more than just a defensive boost, because one of the main things that reduces the DPS uptime of minions is slows. The most common slow in the game is actually chill. So if my Animate Guardian is taking the chill effect from my minions, this in many cases, because there's a lot of cold damage with all the Arch Nemesis bullshit, is actually a DPS increase for the minion army as well. Now, this is not really something you can just show on a POB, so that's not how it works. But in actual gameplay, it contributes both to defense and offense. We're using Learcast, which is the newly redesigned, actually it's not redesigned, it's just buffed. 50 increased damage. You and nearby allies gain 50 increased damage. So you can get the one where nearby enemies take more chaos, like 9% increased chaos, something like that. I wouldn't. And I wouldn't because Learcast is much larger, and I think it contributes to the explosions from the Occultist Profane Bloom a little bit more practically, because this is a huge area. And 50 damage is a lot. We actually don't have as much increased damage as you think. So this item is fantastic. I'm honestly not even going to bother with the influenced eye level 85 helm like I had in previous leagues. This is good enough in my opinion. Now, anyway. We have boots. The boots is probably the most important piece. We do want to get some increased life regeneration, even though I don't have that much life regeneration on my actual minions. Because I'm using Purifying Flame constantly, there is Consecrated Ground, which is applying a large regeneration effect to everything under it. It's also providing Curse Effect Reduction, which is the only way you can get that on your minions. So I highly recommend you guys pick up that skill if you are a summoner from level 1, in fact. Now, the main ailment that I want to mitigate on the Animate Guardian is shock. Shock is the most deadly ailment to an Animate Guardian. And yeah, my Animate Guardian has like 50,000 health. He has 88 all resists. There's almost nothing that's going to shock him except for the handful of abilities in the game that have like a minimum shock value. But a very common map mod, and now some of the arch nemesis mobs, they can actually put down shocked ground. Now, if you have a 99% chance to avoid being shocked and you step on shocked ground, guess what happens? You are shocked for the full value. And being shocked for the full value is one of those like, oh my god, how did my Animate Guardian die moments. It's a big factor in that. So what I'm trying to do here, because my Animate Guardian is taking a whole slew of ailments for me, my entire army, the main one that needs to go is shock. So I actually rolled these boots with the chance to avoid shock essence. It's not even the tier 1. You don't really need the tier 1 because even with a lesser Exarch you can roll the implicit to avoid shock, and we can finish it off with the chest craft 25 to avoid ailments. And it's nice to have the prefix clean so you can do movement speed and cannot be chilled. This is important, just again, chilled ground is a thing, just so your Animate Guardian keeps up with you, because you generally tend to run a little bit ahead of your minions. Also, don't neglect the enchant from the labyrinth, 2% life regenerated if you were hit recently. This is quite nice because, at least in my version of the build, I actually don't stack a lot of regeneration. It's not like my Animate Guardian naturally has a lot of health per second. He just is extremely tanky. He has minion life and meat shield. So, yeah. The gloves, I'm just trying to bridge the gap in chaos resist, so with a craft you can do that, and I wanted the increased life regeneration modifier as well. I just used a few implicits. Intimidate enemies on hit contributes a very small amount of damage. It is certainly not necessary, but you know what? It's like a couple percentage points. Most of the damage the minions do is poison. Intimidate is just the attack portion of the damage. It's still significant, just not as big as it normally is in one of these builds. The armor, I actually rolled this with, I forget what it's called. Is it Essence of Horror? I'm not sure. 25% increased area of effect. There's really nothing special here. I just wanted that modifier, and I wanted the open prefix to craft, chance to avoid elemental ailments. So that's my Animate Guardian. Now, a few of the other skills that we can quickly go over. So Convocation is really important. I'm using Carrion Golem. Normally I advocate for Stone Golem because the regeneration effect and the taunt effect is very powerful, but in this case we're using Meat Shield, so the Spectres and the Animate Guardian will taunt when necessary. The Carrion Golem is just the best use of Feeding Frenzy. I am not comfortable putting Feeding Frenzy on my Spectres or my Animate Guardian, and it takes up a link on the main skills if I put it there. So it looks like Carrion Golem is now the go-to golem for summoners. I know some summoners in the past were using it. A lot of them are probably noobs for doing so, or just, you know, pushing up numbers in POB. But now it's really the only way to consistently get Feeding Frenzy. The Carrion Golem is just a very aggressive and extremely fast-hitting minion. So he will always have Feeding Frenzy up for you, and he is the only minion that can actually do that. I have Steelskin, I have Despair, so I am hard casting Despair. Now this might be annoying, you might want like a curse on hit ring, but the difference between casting Despair and gaining the effect of the Doom stacks and having the quality bonus of Despair, which is increased damage taken from damage over time effects, that's a pretty spicy quality bonus, by the way. So the difference in casting Despair and having it on a trigger ring is more than 10% of your total damage. Okay, just let that sink in. It is an enormous difference. And you saw me just run through a T16 map. It's not really a big deal. You can just do that. I also, very often when it's very difficult content there, I actually curse monsters in the back, so my Temp Chain's aura cascades to them in the back. In some cases, a curse on hit ring, unless it's really densely populated, will not cascade Profane Bloom in the back. It might be a little bit annoying. It's not make or break for the character, but I highly advocate for casted curses on this build. I do not think it is worth it to use a curse on hit situation. Flame Dash, Stormbrand, you just put one down if you're at a boss just to get the constant hits. If there's no mobs around whatsoever, Heralded Purity will struggle to proc on your occasional use of Purifying Flame, so you do need Stormbrand. Anomalous Withering Step, I actually really like this. Withering Step gives you like a little bit of a speed boost. It just front loads those wither stacks, and then your passive as an occultist keeps up the regular stack after that. A lot of poison users use like the double totem garbage, and they have crappy wither stacks, and it's like not realistic uptime. If you kind of get the hang of using Withering Step, because it does actually share the cooldown of Flame Dash. So if you Flame Dash, you can't Withering Step. But if you have free charges, you can Withering Step and then Flame Dash out. So, you know, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it is totally worth it. It is so powerful. Of course, Purifying Flame. We're using Meat Shield along with Minion Life for Animate Guardian and Ray Spectre. We have Grace, and that's about it, actually. Yeah. So the Spectres, let's finish off on that. So the Spectres are pretty interesting. Again, we are stacking slow as our main defensive layer, and I have the proof for it to show you how strong it is. So we're using a Spectre that it was discovered before, but it started getting some wide use in this patch. It is the Wild Brisson Matron. This is from Harvest, the purple seeds. It's a tier 2, 3, I don't know. It's not that rare. It's not that rare. What this guy does, it's kind of wonky. It kind of does this big slam. It does okay damage, but with a pretty high uptime, it does a roar, and the roar is a 40% action slow, and the radius on it is enormous. So this is a major part of our survivability. If the roar is up and we have temp chains and the Animate Guardian is near us, the monsters just stand still when they're near you. Like if they're ranged monsters, okay, sure. But most ranged monsters are actually spellcasters, where your spell suppression starts to kick in. It's no problemo. So it's a very effective defensive lair. Another Spectre, do we have? Yes. I just started using this because this is the 4th Spectre, the Ruins Hellion. This is like a legendary fabled Spectre, okay? The Ruins Hellion has a taunt rallying cry. Normally, taunt reduces damage to other targets by 10%, so it's really good to get taunt on your minions or use the Meat Shield gem. But the Ruins Hellion taunt is a 30% with an almost complete uptime. The main issue with Ruins Hellion is when it uses the taunt, nearby monsters, well, they actually attack it. And that's when it dies. It doesn't have that much health. It's not like horribly pathetically weak, but it doesn't have that much health. It's not a very tanky Spectre. And some of its resistances are actually baseline 0, making previous minion builds having a very difficult time to actually cap its resistance at 75. But thanks to the new bone rings, the new stats on the shields, it is now actually very decent to get massive resistance and resistance overcap on the Ruins Hellion. Also, with this unique setup of slow-based defensive mechanism, this defensive mechanism is also simultaneously applying to my minions. Because my Ray Spectre and my Ruins Hellion is connected to my Meat Shield, when it does the taunt, it's going to be near me, and the mobs are just going to get locked in that slow aura around my character. And I also want to point that one big aspect of being evasion defenses for minions is that minions actually have pretty high base evasion. Minions have like 6,000 to 7,000 base evasion. I think the zombies do anyway. So if you use Grace, it actually gives them a substantial amount of chance to just dodge attacks, which is really powerful, evade attacks. It used to be that you would just use Defiance Banner, but Defiance Banner got pretty gutted for that purpose. So yeah, nice little perk for that. The other one, using the Pale Seraphim, which is a 20% action slow as well as a 20% increased damage taken. It's not full uptime on the POB, that's why it shows as a shock value. POB link is below. And we're obviously using a Frenzy Monkey. Damage over time, the attack speed and cast speed was nerfed, but the actual Frenzy charge is giving 4% damage for each charge. That's still there. It's definitely worth the 1 Spectre slot. Overall, I find this character to be fantastic. I think it's very tanky. Oh yeah, I wanted to prove it to you guys. I have belt enchants. I did these belt enchants when this character had 5k health and 0 armor. I did Uber Lab 3 times. And I did about 40 regular Uber Labs in order to get this enchant. I died 0 times. There effectively were no close calls. And we're talking about a character that has very minimal regeneration, almost no physical reduction, and close to 0 armor, which are like the 3 things that you actually need to do Labyrinth successfully. How do we do it? Well, the boss was slowed as hell. It was just easy to avoid everything. And even though we don't have a lot of regeneration, Ghost Dance effectively is regeneration. Right now we're regenerating about 700 energy shield when I get hit, and these things are constantly refreshing. So it's not just a health buffer, it's not just a health extension, it also is kind of like a pseudo regeneration mechanic. So overall, it works pretty well. In terms of the range of minion builds possible, probably Absolution's like the best build out there still, but the damage is worse than half of last league. I'm not going to play that nerfed of a version of a build I've already played and maybe even pioneered, some would say. Maybe. But we're going to make some cool new shit, and I think in that department we hit a slam dunk. So hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys learned something. Again, thank you guys for coming on this YouTube channel. But we don't have that much PoE content on it anymore. I do want to keep doing these videos. These videos have been doing pretty well, but they only do pretty well because you guys thumb up the video, okay? Pushing the algorithm on content that is unlike what you normally have on your channel has to be done. Otherwise, it gets no visibility. If people don't like interact with untypical content, that's not the right word. Okay, dude, I've been streaming all day for 12 days in a row. People don't end up seeing it in their sub box and shit like that, and it kind of cascades and it kind of goes to nothingness. So I don't ask for people's support. I don't ask to smash that like button. Actually, to be fair, I think the only videos where I ask that are the Path of Exile ones. So if you're watching this video at this point, 40 minutes in, better do it. See you next time.